The badge reader flashed red hard enough to color my hand. I tried again, slower this time, while rain ticked against the glass doors of the Harcourt Museum's service entrance. Behind me, 2 box trucks idled along the curb. A dozen contractors stood under the loading canopy with coffee cups, tool belts, and the particular patience of people already charging by the hour. The reader chirped red again. "You're not needed anymore," my brother announced beside the security desk. Adrian said it pleasantly, as if he'd upgraded my seat on a flight. Our mother stood 6 feet behind him, holding a cardboard tray of coffees. She looked at the lids instead of me. Before security could answer, Mara Voss came out of her office with the mandatory safety brief open in her hands. She scanned the first page, then looked from Adrian to me. "This name's Nina as event safety lead," she said. "Every emergency decision still carries her name." For one stupid second, all I could hear was the rain and the soft diesel growl of the trucks. I set my blue china pencil on the security counter so I wouldn't snap it in half. "Who accepted my responsibilities?" I asked. Adrian's smile tightened. He was wearing a charcoal suit at 6:40 in the morning. No tie yet. The collar opened just enough to suggest he had dressed without trying. I had known him 37 years and had never once seen him dress without trying. "Cal Dorsey is taking production," he said. Cal's the lighting designer. He's run larger rooms than this. "Has he accepted safety lead?" Mara turned a page, not according to this. Adrian glanced over his shoulder. Through the glass, the head rigger lifted one wrist and tapped his watch. The floral truck behind him had started blocking the alley. "We made a staffing change," Adrian told Mara. "Nina's access should have been removed yesterday." It was. Mara's voice had the flat calm of a person who had spent 20 years listening to event professionals explain why their emergency was special. "Your staffing change wasn't submitted to me. I emailed revised contacts. You emailed a guest-facing contact sheet. This is the binding load-in brief." He gave a small laugh. "Binding seems dramatic." It becomes dramatic when someone drops 600 pounds of scenery. Mom shifted the coffees. 1 cup tipped, leaking through the tray. Mara laid the brief on the counter between us. My name appeared in 6 separate boxes: emergency command, overhead work release, dock sequencing, evacuation liaison, weather response, guest entry clearance. Adrian saw them. I watched him understand that deactivating a badge was much easier than transferring responsibility. "So update it," he said. "I can," Mara replied. "Give me your qualified replacement. I'll do the building walkthrough, revise the chain of command, collect vendor acknowledgments, and reopen the dock when that's complete." "How long?" 2 hours if everyone's available." The head rigger knocked on the glass. Adrian stared past me at the trucks. The museum charged detention after 15 minutes. The rigger's minimum call had already begun. Catering was due at 7:15, followed by rentals, sound, linens, auction displays, and 28 cases of wine that couldn't sit in a wet alley. He lowered his voice. "Nina, can we speak privately? You made the change publicly." Mom finally looked at me. "Can we please just get everyone inside?" That told me more than I wanted to know. She hadn't learned about this at the security desk. Maybe she hadn't known Adrian would make a speech, but she'd known the badge would turn red. Mara picked up her radio. "Dock remains closed." Adrian's jaw moved once. Then he reached across the counter and took the visitor form from the guard. "Restore her access." "And authority," I said. "We don't have time for this." "Then Cal can do the walkthrough." Cal was standing outside under the canopy, smoking beneath a no-smoking sign while trying to shield the cigarette inside his fist. Adrian looked at him, then back at me. "Restore Nina's access and authority for today," he said. "In writing," Mara told him. I almost smiled. Mara had the rare gift of making other people sound like they'd volunteered for her decisions. The guard printed a new credential while Adrian signed the amendment. Mom separated the damp coffee cups and offered me one. "I think this is yours." The lid had an N written on it. Oat milk, 1 sugar. She remembered exactly how I took coffee. She had also arrived early enough to watch Adrian lock me out. "No thanks. Nina." The printer coughed out my badge. I picked up my china pencil and clipped the credential to my jacket. "Open the dock, Mara." The doors hadn't finished sliding apart before Luis Ortega came through them backward, pulling a yellow pallet jack. "Please tell me this building didn't decide it hates us," he said. "Just me. Buildings got taste. Luis was the head rigger and had worked enough Mercer events to insult us with precision. He was broad through the shoulders, silver at the temples, and always carried 2 pairs of reading glasses because he distrusted both. He glanced at Adrian, took in the suit, and lowered his voice. "We still doing your revised canopy?" "That's the only version approved." "Good." He said it too quickly. "What arrived?" Luis looked toward the first box truck. Before he could answer, Adrian stepped through the doors. "We're 40 minutes behind. Scenic goes straight to the ballroom. Floral holds outside until the truss is offloaded." "That isn't the dock sequence," I said. "It is now." The first truck's rear door rattled upward. Inside, stacked black carts were strapped in 2 rows. The manifest clip near the door said, "Scenic aluminum frames." I climbed onto the lift gate and put a hand against the nearest cart. It didn't move. "Aluminum?" I asked. The driver gave me a tired look. "Maybe they make aluminum heavier in New Jersey." Luis climbed up beside me and pulled back the moving blanket. A mirrored panel caught the gray morning and threw my reflection at me in pieces. Not the revised canopy. My version used narrow acrylic leaves on lightweight frames, 12 modules in all, with open space down the center. The panel behind the blanket was part of Adrian's original design, mirrored glass laminated onto steel-backed frames, beautiful and heavy, and approved by no one at the Harcourt. I turned around. Adrian was already directing 2 stagehands toward the cart. "Stop," I said. Neither stagehand stopped. They looked at Adrian because he was the event director and I was the woman whose badge had failed in front of them 10 minutes earlier. I stepped between them and the pallet jack. "Luis, what does this cart weigh?" He checked the shipping label under the plastic. 3480, listed. "With the pallet jack and 2 hands, it'll be over the service elevator's limit." "The elevator is rated for 4,000, Adrian said. "Static load. Mara's facilities team capped event loads at 3,500 after the thermal relay fault." He stared at me. "We covered it during the walkthrough you missed." I was with the client. I know. That was how it always worked. Adrian missed a room because he was winning the person who owned it. I learned the room so his promise could fit inside. He turned to Luis. "Break the cart down." "We can," Luis said, "but I need somewhere to stage the panels, and this dock's the size of my first apartment. You said you could recover 40 minutes. That was before 40 minutes put on mirrors and gained a ton. A snort came from the truck. One of the stagehands covered it with a cough. Adrian's eyes found mine. "Can you solve it, or are we going to discuss who attended which meeting?" The familiar invitation was there. Rescue him, then apologize for noticing. I stepped off the lift gate and opened my binder on the security counter. The dock plan was on top, its corners softened from 6 weeks of use. I drew a blue line through the original sequence. "Floral goes first." "The flowers aren't overhead," Adrian said. "Exactly. We clear them to the ballroom perimeter while Scenic breaks this into elevator-safe loads. Catering enters through the east dock on schedule. Luis gets a clean staging lane here." I circled a strip of concrete along the interior wall. Mara leaned over the plan. "That blocks my custodial cage." "For 20 minutes. 15. 18. "Fine." I handed Luis the china pencil. "Initial the change." He looked at it, then me. "You want my autograph?" "I've always wanted something to remember you by." He initialed beside the blue line. Adrian watched the exchange. "Is this how today's gonna go?" I slid the pencil behind my ear. "Documented?" "Yes." He walked toward the ballroom without answering. The floral truck backed in. Micah Bell, the florist, came through the dock holding one end of a 6-foot olive branch while his assistant held the other. "I was promised rolling trees," he said. You were promised a lot this week. They don't roll, they judge. Mom appeared beside me with the coffee tray, though only Adrian's drink remained. She watched the floral crew thread buckets and branches through the service corridor. You embarrassed him, she said quietly. I checked the time on my load card. He deactivated my access. He was trying to keep the client from seeing conflict. The client was asleep at 6:40. You know what I mean? I did. For years, Mercer Events had sold a particular picture. Adrian at the center, warm and effortless, while the rest of us made his effort disappear. Disagreement ruined the picture. So did invoices, load calculations, crew fatigue, weather, damaged linen, and me. Mom touched the edge of my binder. Her nails were painted the pale pink she wore to donor events. He thinks this partnership could get us out from under the warehouse. What partnership? Her hand stopped. A road case squealed around the corner. We both moved aside. Nina, today is important. That wasn't my question. She lowered her voice further. Arden Hospitality has been talking to him. The name landed with a strange, cold neatness. Arden managed convention hotels in 9 cities. They had enough recurring work to stabilize Mercer Events for years, and enough purchasing power to turn us into a department with our name printed small at the bottom. How long? Since March. It was June. And you knew. He didn't want to bring you in until there was something real. I looked through the open ballroom doors. Adrian stood beneath the museum's marble arch, directing the placement of a canopy he had ordered behind my back for a partnership he had discussed behind my back, after removing me from an event whose liability still carried my name. Mom followed my gaze. He's trying to protect what we built. From me? From another bad year. That one found the soft place. The warehouse move had been my recommendation. The old space flooded twice and couldn't accommodate our growing inventory, but the new lease had begun 3 months before a corporate client cut its entire events budget. We had spent the winter taking smaller jobs at thinner margins. Mom had pledged her townhouse to secure the equipment line. No one needed to remind me. I thought about it every time I approved overtime. A crash sounded from the dock, followed by swearing. I ran back. One of the mirrored panels leaned against the wall, intact. A steel corner had punched through the lid of a floral crate. Water spread across the concrete around crushed white orchids. Micah stood over them, silent. The stagehand, who had lost his grip, looked sick. Mr. Mercer said we had to move faster. Adrian arrived 3 steps behind me. Is anyone hurt? No, Louise said. Then clean it up and keep going. Micah bent and picked up one ruined stem. Those came in from Hawaii yesterday. We'll cover the damage, Adrian told him. That doesn't make more orchids appear. Adrian checked his watch. Use the reserve stems. There are no reserve stems. Every florist builds overage into an order. Micah's expression changed. Not anger yet, something more expensive. I crouched beside the broken crate. The panel's steel foot had blue tape around it. On the tape, in black marker, someone had written M7. There were 18 panels in Adrian's original design. My approved version had 12. Luis, I said, how many mirrored units are on that truck? He didn't need to count. 18. Adrian looked at me as if the answer belonged to both of us and had betrayed only him. I stood, brushing water from my fingers. Nothing else comes off that truck, I said. We are not stopping again. I approved 12 lightweight modules. These are the original 18 steel-backed panels. The vendor certified the weight. The weight is only one problem. Nina, they're here. And my name is still on the brief. Around us, the dock had gone quiet in sections. Contractors pretended to check straps and wheels while listening. Adrian stepped close enough that I could smell his coffee. You got your badge back, he said softly. Don't confuse that with running my event. I took the blue pencil from behind my ear and drew a line across the scenic release box. Then take your event out of my name. Adrian's face went still. It was the expression he used when a client asked whether a cheaper centerpiece would look cheap. All the warmth remained in place, but it no longer belonged to the person standing in front of him. "Fine," he said. "Mara can amend the brief." Luis took off one pair of reading glasses and put on the other. Micah remained beside the crushed orchids, holding the broken stem like evidence. "Until she does," I said, "the scenic truck stays closed. You don't get to hold the whole event hostage because a florist lost one box." Micah looked down at the orchids. Interesting use of lost. Mara came through the security door with her radio clipped to one hand. "Why did I just hear hostage on my dock?" Adrian gestured toward the truck. "Nina is refusing to release approved scenery. I'm refusing unapproved overhead scenery." Mara climbed onto the lift gate and pulled the blanket from the nearest panel, her mouth compressed. "These are glass." "Laminated mirror," Adrian said. The fabricator provided a safety certificate. The approved packet says acrylic. "It's an aesthetic substitution." "It's an engineering substitution," I said. Adrian looked at Mara. "Can they be unloaded?" She ran her fingers along the steel frame, then checked the shipping label. "Broken into compliant elevator loads, yes. Staged in the ballroom, no. Nothing goes overhead until my rigging supervisor reviews the drawings. We have a 7 o'clock reception. Then I'd get him the drawings." She turned away and called facilities on her radio. Adrian rubbed one thumb along the edge of his phone. "How long will that take?" Mara kept walking. "Depends whether he enjoys surprises." He turned to me. "Release them to the sculpture corridor. The stone floor there isn't rated for loaded steel dollies." "Then where?" I opened the dock plan. Collections receiving, 2 panels per cart stored flat against the south cage. Luis controls access. That puts them on the other side of the building. It also keeps them off Micah's flowers. We lose an hour moving them twice. You lost the hour when you changed the order. His eyes flicked toward the contractors. "Inside, now." He meant me. I followed him into the service corridor because the caterer's truck had appeared in the alley, and fighting beside a reversing vehicle was how people got flattened while proving a point. The corridor smelled like floor wax and wet cardboard. Adrian pushed open the door to a small staff break room and let it swing shut behind me. "What exactly do you want?" he asked. "My access and authority were restored 11 minutes ago. You're already asking how to get rid of me again. You know what I mean. I want the approved event installed. You designed the approval around the version you preferred. I designed it around the load limits. You could have made the original concept work. Not with 18 panels. With 12? With 12 steel panels and a different table layout, maybe. You didn't ask." "I did ask. You sent me a page of concerns. I sent you 3 workable options. You sent me 3 ways to make the room look like a hotel luncheon." He leaned against a vending machine, and for a second he looked less like the man from the security desk and more like my brother after a bad night. Tired around the mouth, gray beneath the polish. "Arden's creative director is coming at noon," he said. "Mom told me." "Of course she did." "March, Adrian?" There was nothing to tell in March. There was enough to deactivate my badge. That was this morning's decision. I believed him, which somehow made it worse. He hadn't planned the humiliation for weeks. He had reached the building, decided I was inconvenient, and removed me like a rental chair. He pushed away from the vending machine. Arden doesn't partner with family shops where every operational decision turns into a domestic argument. Then maybe don't have one at the security desk. They need to see a clear chain of command. The Harcourt also needed one. That's why my name is on it. And that brief is making my point for me. You've built a structure where nothing moves without your permission. That isn't true. You're blocking scenery right now. The ballroom lighting is loading. Floral is moving. Catering is about to dock. Sound is upstairs. One unapproved element is stopped. The element the entire room was sold around. There it was, not just ego. He had sold the mirrored ceiling to the foundation's gala chair, shown it in renderings, described what it would do when the doors opened. Adrian could make a client fall in love with the feeling of a thing before anyone had calculated its weight. Usually, I found a way to preserve the feeling. Usually, he let me. "The rigging supervisor may give us a modified path," I said. "But I need the actual fabrication drawings. They're coming. When did you request them?" He looked at the vending machine. "Adrian, this morning." I laughed once. It came out sharp. "What was I supposed to do?" he snapped. "Bring you in earlier so you could kill it before it got here?" "You mean before it cost us money? I mean before fear became the only person making decisions." The break room door opened. Mom stood there with Adrian's coffee in one hand. "Catering needs someone," she said. "Of course they do," Adrian muttered. The truck belonged to Joe Park, whose company fed half the museum galas in the city and distrusted every freight elevator equally. She stood at the dock in a white chef's coat under a red rain shell, staring at the scenic panels being transferred onto smaller carts. "What did you buy?" she asked me. "A chandelier with opinions." "Does it need refrigeration?" "Only attention." "Good. Because I have 300 panna cottas in that truck, and your event director just told my driver to use the east dock." "The east dock is yours." He also told Scenic to use it. I looked down the corridor. 2 stagehands were rolling a panel toward the far end, away from collections receiving. "Who directed that?" Emmy asked. Joe pointed with her clipboard. Cal Dorsey stood outside the auction gallery, talking into his headset. He saw me coming and ended the conversation. "Adrian wants the remaining panels through east," he said. "It's faster to the ballroom." The east route crosses catering prep. Catering isn't in yet, because Scenic is blocking its dock. Cal pushed his glasses up. He was a good lighting designer and an anxious liar. The left side of his neck turned red whenever he knew a decision was stupid, but didn't want to be the person who said so. "He said you were handling paperwork," Cal told me. "Did he say you were taking safety?" The red climbed higher. "He said production." "Those aren't the same thing." "I know that." "Do you?" He looked offended, then glanced toward the truck. "I'm trying to get this room lit. We have focus at 4, and the lift can't work once tables are placed. Then keep your lift path clear. The panels go to collections receiving." "Tell him?" "I am telling you because he used you to issue the instruction." Cal pulled off his headset. "Don't make me part of whatever this is between you two. You became part of it when you moved a steel-backed panel into a food prep corridor. Joe came up behind me. And now you're part of something between me and you." Cal exhaled through his nose. "Fine. Collections receiving." I marked the routing change on the dock card and held out the pencil. He looked at it. "Seriously?" Initial beside the time. "Nina. If Adrian changes it again, I want to know whose instruction the crew followed." He initialed hard enough to tear the paper. Joe took the pencil from him. "Do I sign something for not poisoning anyone?" "You can sign my memoir." "I want recipe approval." Once her truck was on the dock, the next 20 minutes moved cleanly. Speed on a load-in never felt fast. It felt like no one having to stop. Hot boxes went to the service kitchen. Cold cases went to the walk-in. Linens rolled upstairs in labeled cages. I diverted the auction displays around Cal's lift and found Micah a dry staging area in the museum shop, where his olive trees watched tourists buy postcards of paintings they had just seen. Then the freight elevator stopped between floors. The alarm on the control panel gave one tired chirp. Joe closed her eyes. I knew it hated me. "What's inside?" I asked. 6 speed racks, 2 cooks, and enough cream to make this personal. I hit the call button. Nothing. Mara arrived with a facilities engineer named Vernon, who opened the service panel and read the fault. "Thermal trip," he said. 10-minute reset if the motor cools. I looked toward collections receiving. The first 2 mirrored panels had gone up separately, but someone had loaded the third cart with 3. The empty cart sat beside the elevator door, its shipping labels still attached. "Who sent the last load?" I asked. A stagehand raised his hand halfway. Mr. Mercer said the two-panel rule was wasting trips. Adrian was in the ballroom with Mom greeting the gala chair. Mara read the labels and did the math. That load was over the event cap. The elevator rating says 4,000, the stagehand said. The cap is 3,500, I told him. It's in your vendor acknowledgement. I didn't get one. Luis came down the corridor. My crew signed. He's supplemental labor, Cal said. Adrian added 4 hands this morning. Mara's gaze landed on me. Your brief lists 12 rigging personnel. We now have 16. Not according to the submitted roster. I wrote the 4 names on a blank acknowledgement sheet and took the stagehands through the elevator cap, dock route, overhead zone, and stop work signal while Vernon reset the motor. It cost us 11 minutes. It could have cost an hour if the relay had failed closed. When the elevator doors finally opened, 2 cooks emerged with their arms folded. One of them pointed at Joe. I'm charging you rent. You're getting a panna cotta. I want 2. You were trapped for 11 minutes, not deployed overseas. They rolled the cream into the kitchen. I found Adrian at the edge of the ballroom, showing Evelyn and the gala chair a rendering on his tablet. In the image, mirrored leaves floated above candlelit tables like shards of moonlight. It was gorgeous. He finished describing the entrance before acknowledging me. The elevator tripped, I said, but it's running. Because Vernon reset it. You overrode the cart limit and added 4 stagehands who weren't briefed. The gala chair, Celeste Rowan, looked between us. She was small, silver-haired, and dressed in black trousers with paint on one cuff. Everyone described her as intimidating because she didn't rescue people from their own sentences. Adrian smiled. We had a minor equipment pause. It's handled. You also changed the crew count. We're behind. I brought in help. Then they need acknowledgments before they work. Absolutely. He turned to Celeste. Nina manages our compliance. Compliance. The word put me in a basement with a stamp and a cardigan. Celeste looked at my wet jacket. You seem to manage the dock. That too. Adrian's smile sharpened. Nina likes to be useful everywhere. Mom stepped between us with the gentleness of someone closing a drawer. Celeste, let me show you the auction gallery. The lighting is almost finished. After they left, Adrian held out his hand. Give me the load cards. No. They're company documents. They're active safety records, and I'm named lead. I need to review what you're putting in writing. You're welcome to read them. He picked up the top sheet before I could stop him. His eyes moved over the blue lines, the times, the initials beside his rerouting instructions, and elevator override. This makes it look like I caused every delay. You caused those delays. You wrote it to make that argument. I wrote what changed. He gave the cards back. From now on, department heads take creative and schedule direction from me. You handle safety compliance and nothing else. You can't separate schedule from safety when the schedule determines who shares a dock or works under a lift. Watch me. He walked away. On the ballroom production table, beneath his tablet lay the latest internal run of show. I recognized the header because I had built the template. I opened it. My name was still printed beside Emergency Authority, but in the approval chain, Adrian had removed me from rigging, vendor changes, crew additions, dock schedule, and room release. Every operational decision flowed to him. Every consequence flowed back to me. At the bottom was a signature line marked, Event Safety Lead, Final Acceptance. Cal approached carrying a folder. Adrian needs you to sign that before the rigging supervisor gets here. I looked at the signature line, then at the 12 approved acrylic modules listed on one page and the 18 steel-backed panels sitting across the museum. Does he? He says it confirms you're still in role. No, it confirms I accept whatever he decides. Cal shifted his folder against his chest. I'm not getting between you. You keep saying that while standing exactly between us. A woman entered through the ballroom's service doors with a hard-sided suitcase and a venue visitor badge clipped to her navy blazer. She paused to study the room before she studied the people, which told me she knew production. Adrian hurried toward her with both hands extended. "Tessa, thank God." She hugged him once, professionally. Then Mara appeared behind her carrying a fresh copy of the safety brief. "Tessa Ward," Mara said to me, "Adrian has proposed her as your replacement." Tessa's eyes dropped to the load cards in my hand, then rose to the mirrored rendering over Adrian's shoulder. "All right," she said. "Show me what I'm being asked to own." I handed Tessa the load cards. Adrian reached for them at the same time. Tessa stepped sideways without looking at him. "You asked me to take responsibility," she said. "That means I hear from the person carrying it now." Her tone wasn't warm, and I appreciated that more than sympathy. We started at the dock. I showed her the revised route, the elevator cap, the added stagehands, the crushed floral crate, and the steel-backed panels in collections receiving. Tessa asked precise questions and waded through complete answers. When I told her Mara had restored my authority in writing, she asked to see the amendment. When I showed her the internal run of show, she put the two documents side by side on a road case. "This one gives her the consequences," she told Adrian. "This one gives you the decisions." That's an oversimplification. It's 2 sheets of paper. The run of show reflects client communication. Nina remains our safety lead until you accept. "You told me she had a family emergency." Tessa said it casually, almost kindly. Adrian's glance hit me and moved away. I said a family matter made her availability uncertain. "My availability was uncertain because you killed my badge." Tessa closed her eyes for half a second. "All right." She walked through the collections cage, measured the widest panel with a tape from her suitcase, and examined the fabricator's labels. Then she crouched to look beneath a steel foot. "Where are the engineered drawings?" "Being delivered," Adrian said. "You hired me to take over a suspended installation without drawings?" "I hired you to manage the event. You called at 5:50 this morning. And you said you were available." "I said I could be available. I didn't say I'd put my name on a blindfold." Adrian lowered his voice. "Can we not do this in front of the crew?" Tessa looked around. "The crew is exactly where I do this." Mara took us through the service corridors while Tessa marked exits and fire equipment on a fresh floor plan. At the ballroom, she checked the distance from the proposed dinner tables to the east egress doors, then studied Adrian's rendering. "The center closes the sightline to the exit signs," she said. "The panels are reflective," he replied. "They won't read as solid." "Smoke doesn't care how they read." He looked at me as if I had taught her the sentence. Tessa turned to Celeste, who had returned with Mom. "Has the foundation approved a reduced table count if the layout changes?" Celeste's eyebrows lifted. "No one has proposed one." "We don't need to reduce count," Adrian said. "Then we need to reduce scenery." "That's what Nina wants." Tessa glanced at me. "What Nina wants isn't relevant to whether the plan works." It stung, and it also cleared the air. She asked for my approved version. I spread the drawing on a banquet table. 12 open modules followed the curve of the room without crossing the marked egress sightlines. Tessa traced the center gap with one finger. "This works," she said. "It's also less impressive." "Thank you," Adrian said. "That doesn't make your version safe." "Can you make it safe?" "Probably, not by pretending it already is." For the first time that morning, Adrian had no immediate answer. The Harcourt's rigging supervisor arrived carrying a dented aluminum clipboard. Omar Greaves was a narrow man with a shaved head and a habit of tapping each load value with the back of his pen. The fabricator's drawings reached Adrian's email while Omar was walking in. We printed them in the museum office and laid them across Mara's conference table. Omar tapped 2 ceiling points. "These are over." "The total load is below the ballroom limit," Adrian said. "The ballroom doesn't hang from one giant hook. These 2 points are over." The fabricator redistributed the weight. "On their grid, not mine." He tapped again. Adrian turned to me. "You said 12 might work." 12 steel panels might work if we remove the center 6, shift the donor tables 18 inches south, and spread the outer pick points. Omar read the calculation. That gets me close. I'll want a test lift and real numbers from Luis's load cells. Celeste leaned over the table. How will it look? I rotated the rendering and covered the center section with my hands. The canopy becomes 2 mirrored sweeps instead of one ceiling. Micah can bring the olive trees into the gap and build a ground arrangement through the center. My orchids are down a crate, Micah said from the doorway. Adrian shot him a look. But my olive trees remain judgmental, Micah added. Celeste studied the image. Would guests still enter beneath it? Beside it, Adrian said grimly. They would enter into the open center, I said. It would feel more like an aisle. That isn't what we sold. Celeste looked at him. I'd rather explain an aisle than falling glass. Omar marked the drawing in red. No center 6. Tables remain outside the overhead work zone until the test lift is complete. I want the south egress visible from the entrance. He signed beside those conditions, then pushed the drawing to Mara. Mara signed beneath him. Adrian's phone buzzed. He read the screen and straightened his jacket. Simone Vale is here. Mom touched her hair. Celeste removed the paint-specked cuff of her trousers from beneath one shoe. The room changed before Simone even entered. She came through the main gallery with Adrian's assistant, moving slowly enough to notice the architecture. She was in her 40s, perhaps, with a copper-colored suit and white sneakers that had never met a loading dock. As Arden Hospitality's creative director, she had the polished restraint of someone accustomed to being shown expensive things. Adrian met her beneath the marble arch. You're early. I'm never early. Other people are optimistic. He laughed too hard. He introduced Celeste and Mom, then me. My sister Nina oversees event compliance. Operations, I said. Simone shook my hand. I was told Mercer has an integrated production model. We're discussing what's integrated, I replied. Mom made a tiny sound in her throat. Adrian guided Simone toward the ballroom rendering before she could ask more. He was excellent once he started. He talked about the Harcourt stone, the mirrored canopy, and the way the foundation's guests would see themselves suspended inside the museum's history. Even knowing how much trouble the concept had caused, I could hear why Celeste had bought it. Then Simone looked at the actual room. The panels remained in collections receiving. Micah's trees stood along the walls. Cal's lift occupied the center beneath bare rigging cable. Banquet tables waited folded on carts. When does the ceiling go up? She asked. We're completing a site-driven refinement, Adrian said. Omar's marked drawing sat 10 feet away. Simone picked it up. She read the red conditions without changing expression. Which version was approved when you sold the design? Adrian paused only slightly. The creative evolved during fabrication. Toward more weight, toward greater impact. She handed the drawing to me. And now we can install 12 panels in 2 sweeps if the test loads hold. Who decided that? The building did, Omar said. Simone looked at him, then at me. Buildings are fussy clients. They're difficult to flatter, I said. The corner of her mouth moved. Adrian suggested a tour of the auction gallery. As the group left, Mom caught my sleeve. You couldn't let him answer? She asked me. You know what this means. Yes, it means Arden is evaluating us, and I'm apparently the only partner who wasn't told. You are not a partner on paper. She regretted it at once. The sentence wasn't technically cruel. Mercer events belonged to Mom. Adrian and I were salaried officers with profit-sharing agreements and promises that the company would eventually pass to both of us. We'd spent years calling it ours because saying Mom's company made every sacrifice sound temporary. Good to know, I said. Nina, that isn't what I meant. You meant Arden doesn't need my consent. We need stability. The warehouse line resets in September, and the bank wants stronger recurring revenue. I know what the bank wants. I built the forecast. and Adrian found the opportunity. He also found 18 unapproved panels. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Why do you always make me choose between the two of you?" I looked at her. "You arrived with his coffee after he locked me out." Her hand dropped. Across the ballroom, Luis called for the first test cart. Mom's voice softened. "Just get us through tonight." That request had shaped most of my adult life. Get us through the event. Get us through the quarter. Get us through Adrian's promise, Mom's loan, the client's change, the vendor's mistake. Every crisis came with an implied tomorrow when my place would finally be secure. "Not with my name attached to decisions I don't make," I said. "You're willing to risk my house over a reporting line?" There it was, sharpened and placed carefully between my ribs. "I'm willing to protect it from an accident we can't afford." Mom stepped back. "Sometimes I don't know whether you love this company or only being right about it." She walked away before I could give her an answer I might regret. Luis and Omar ran the test lift with the first 6 panels. The load cells stayed within the revised values. Then they tested the opposite sweep. 1 point ran high until Luis shortened a bridle and shifted the connection. Omar watched the readings settle. 12 works, he said. Adrian stood beside him. And the center 6? No. What if we ground support the center? Not without blocking your aisle. What if we raise them only during guest entry and lower them before dinner? Mara stared at him. We're not moving scenery over guests. I'm asking, and I'm answering. Adrian walked toward me as the crew lowered the test panels. You got your redesign, he said. It isn't mine. Omar calculated it. You knew where this would end. I hoped we could keep 12. You hoped I'd lose the center. I hoped nothing landed on Celeste. His mouth twisted. You always do that. Do what? Turn every disagreement into a body on the floor. It makes anyone who wants more look reckless. Wanting more isn't reckless. Ordering it before the engineering is. He looked toward Simone, who was examining Cal's lighting positions with Celeste. Sign the final acceptance, he said. We install 12, shift the tables, and finish. Fix the internal run of show. Nina, put operational approvals back under the safety chain. Crew additions, dock changes, rigging, room release. I'm not giving you veto power over creative. I didn't ask for it. You exercise it anyway. Then have Tessa accept. Tessa had remained near the production table, reading every page we gave her. Adrian called her over. You've seen the revised plan, he said. Can you take safety lead now? She closed the folder. After the 12-panel installation, a full walkthrough, new vendor acknowledgments, and a handoff from Nina. How long? About 90 minutes. We don't have 90 minutes. Then keep Nina. He studied her. I'm offering you a significant contract. You offered me a family emergency. This is a governance problem with catering. She handed him her visitor badge. I'll invoice the 4-hour minimum. After she left, Adrian stood very still. Then he picked up the internal run of show and wrote my name back beside rigging and dock operations. Happy? Room release. That stays with me. Then final acceptance stays unsigned. He added my initials beside room release and shoved the paper toward me. I signed only the acknowledgement of authority, not final acceptance. He noticed. So we understand each other, I said. For the next 2 hours, we almost worked like ourselves. Luis began the approved 12-panel installation. Micah rebuilt the damaged floral plan around the open center. Joe's crew set the perimeter tables as each overhead zone cleared. Adrian adjusted the guest entrance so the aisle felt intentional. He was good at it. The reduced design became cleaner under his eye, the olive trees breaking up the mirrored edges without hiding them. Then Cal found me in the auction gallery with a melted connector in his hand. We have a power problem. A display contractor had tied 6 illuminated auction plinths into Cal's lighting circuit despite separate service on the plan. The connector had overheated before anything caught fire, but the gallery was dark and the silent auction preview began in less than 2 hours. I traced the cable path, found the unmarked tie-in, and called Vernon. We could redistribute the plinths across 2 wall circuits if the contractor replaced the damaged connector and removed a charging station from the east wall. It was solvable, but not quickly. As I knelt beside the panel with my blue pencil between my teeth, my radio crackled. Luis's voice came through. "Nina, confirm you approved full visual trim." I pulled the pencil from my mouth. 12 panels only. A pause. "Adrian says the new spreader plan cleared all 18 for a temporary sightline test." I was already running. When I reached the ballroom, all 18 mirrored panels were rising beneath the marble ceiling. Banquet tables filled the room below them. Catering staff dressed place settings inside the marked overhead zone, and the 6 forbidden center panels were already high enough to catch my reflection. Mom stood beside the control rope with the signed run of show in her hand. Adrian saw me and lifted one palm. "Before you react," he said, "look at the room." I looked. It was breathtaking. Then one of the center panels gave a slow, bright shiver above Celeste's table. "Red hold," I said into the radio. "Stop the lift, clear the overhead zone." Luis hit the control. The canopy stopped with the center panels 12 feet above the tables. "Everybody out from underneath," I called. Catering staff looked toward Adrian. "Now." Joe clapped twice. "You heard her. Move." Her crew abandoned napkins, glass racks, and half-dressed place settings. Cal lowered his lift and backed it toward the wall. Micah pulled 2 florists away from an olive tree they had been positioning beneath the center span. Adrian came toward me. "It's a temporary visual test, with staff underneath it. They weren't supposed to be there. They're setting tables because guest doors open in 90 minutes. The load is distributed across a new spreader beam." "Approved by whom?" "The fabricator's engineer sent revised calculations." That wasn't my question. Luis climbed down from the control station. His face had closed off. "Adrian showed me the drawing and the run of show," he said. "Said your initials released full visual trim." My initials appeared beside room release because Adrian had added them there in front of me. Nothing on that sheet approved 18 panels. Mom held it as if it had become heavier. "I told Luis you'd signed," she said. "I signed acknowledgement of my authority. Final acceptance is blank." She looked down. The empty line sat at the bottom of the page. Adrian's voice sharpened. "The revised spreader solves the point loads. We raise it, photograph the sightline for Celeste, then remove the center 6. Wire the tables underneath." "We're out of time. The approved condition says tables stay outside the overhead zone until the test is complete. This isn't the test lift. That already happened. Of 12 panels." He spread his hands toward the canopy. The mirrored leaves caught the ballroom sconces and multiplied them, turning the ceiling into a field of fractured gold. "Look at it, Nina. The weight is holding. The lines are clean. This is the room we promised." One panel trembled again as air moved through the gallery doors. Mara came in at a fast walk with Omar behind her. She saw the center 6 and stopped. "Who authorized this?" Adrian held up his phone. "We have revised engineering." Omar took the phone, enlarged the drawing, and read it. "This shows a theoretical redistribution. It doesn't include my ceiling point data. The total loads are within your published limits. I told you this room isn't one hook." "The load cells are green," Adrian said. Luis checked the controller. 2 are trending up. Mara's eyes traveled across the tables below the canopy. "Lower it." Adrian stepped between her and the control station. "Give us 5 minutes. The client needs to see the complete design." Mara walked to the production table, picked up the safety brief, and opened it to the command page. "The client can see it on the floor. Nina, as named safety lead, do you release this installation?" Every department head was in the room. Celeste stood beneath the marble arch beside Simone. My mother remained at the control rope, gripping the false proof she had carried to Luis. Adrian had chosen the most visible possible place to take away my authority that morning. Now the same people were waiting to see whether I would use it. I pulled the blue china pencil from my pocket and crossed out full visual trim on the lift card. No, I said. Bring the canopy down. Adrian stared at me. Mara keyed her radio. Ballroom remains closed to work until the center 6 are removed and the approved test conditions are restored. This will delay doors, Adrian said. Yes, I replied. We'll miss the foundation's reception. We'll shorten it. Celeste will lose her donor preview. She'll lose 20 minutes. You can't promise that. I'm not promising, I'm building the recovery. His face changed then. The performance disappeared. What remained was furious and frightened. You've wanted this all day. I kept my voice low. I wanted you to stop making me choose between protecting you and doing my job. You chose. So did you. Louise started the motors. The canopy descended slowly, its reflection sliding down the marble walls. The center panels reached waist height. He and Omar locked the lift, isolated the middle rigging lines, and began detaching the 6 pieces Adrian had added. Celeste approached while they worked. How late? She asked. Best case, 25 minutes. The president's remarks are scheduled for 7:30. We can seat dinner on time if we cut the preview to 30 minutes and open the auction gallery during dessert instead. The auction gallery is dark. Temporarily. Cal came up beside me. Vernon found 2 clean wall circuits. We can recover if auction removes the charging station. Celeste looked from him to me. Can you do it? Yes. She turned to Adrian. Then that's what we're doing. He nodded. Even cornered, he recovered quickly. I'll revise the guest flow, he said. We'll move the champagne welcome into the sculpture court so the ballroom can finish behind closed doors. Celeste, your president can greet donors there. It'll feel intentional. It was a good solution. Celeste considered it. Make sure it does. Adrian left with her, already describing where the bars should go. That was the difficult truth about him. He could create the fire and still be brilliant at arranging the light. Mom remained near the control station. You said you had the revised engineering, she told him when he passed. I did. You said Nina approved the trim. I said her run of show gave room release authority. You let me repeat it to Louise. Adrian stopped. We didn't have time to litigate every word. Her mouth opened, then closed. I had spent years wishing she would see the difference between the choices he made and the repairs I made afterward. Watching her see it gave me less satisfaction than I'd imagined. She looked old for a moment, not in her face, but in the way she held the paper. Nina, she said, what do you need? Right now? The south table's moved 18 inches, floral in the center gap, catering held at the perimeter until Louise clears overhead. I meant from us. I can't do that conversation and open this gala. She nodded once and carried the marked run of show to the production table. The next hour hurt. Removing 6 panels was faster on paper. Each had to be disconnected, lowered onto padded carts, and returned to collections receiving without blocking the service corridor. Luis's crew went into overtime. Micah rebuilt the central floral installation using olive trees, salvaged orchids, and white stock borrowed from the museum cafe's weekly arrangements. Adrian persuaded Celeste to approve the sculpture court reception, while Mom relocated check-in and found power for the bars. I returned to the auction gallery. Vernon redistributed the illuminated plinths, while Cal's crew replaced the melted connector. The display contractor objected to losing the charging station until I showed him the circuit schedule bearing his supervisor's signature. That's not my handwriting, he said. It's your supervisor's. He signs everything. Today he signed this. He unplugged the station. At 6:52, the auction plinths came on one by one. At 6:56, Omar cleared the 2 canopy sweeps. At 7, Joe began placing hot boxes in the service kitchen. When I checked the ballroom, the open center Adrian had hated now held Micah's olive trees in a low silver bed. Mirrored leaves curved around them like 2 wings. The empty space made the room taller. Micah stood beside his arrangement with a spray bottle. It was better with the Hawaiian orchids, he said. It was. He misted an olive leaf. I appreciate that you didn't tell me the damage improved it. I need you to sign the final floral placement. Romance is dead. He took my blue pencil and initialed the plan. We opened the sculpture court at 7:12. Guests accepted champagne beneath the marble arches, while Adrian moved among them as if the reception had always belonged there. Celeste's president gave shortened remarks from the grand staircase. Simone watched the room, the vendors, and the service doors more than she watched the speech. At 7:40, Mara opened the ballroom. Celeste entered first. She stopped beneath the center gap and looked up. Adrian stood beside her, waiting. "It's beautiful," she said. His smile arrived automatically, then faltered. "Nina's revision," he said. It was the closest he came that night to giving me credit. I cleared guest entry, signed the brief, and went back to the service corridor before anyone could ask me to enjoy the room. Jo handed me a panna cotta from a tray. "This one survived the elevator," she said. I ate it, standing beside a stack of empty glass racks. My hands shook hard enough to click the spoon against the cup. The gala ended at 11:20. Nothing fell. The auction exceeded Celeste's target, helped by the delayed preview turning dessert into a crowded final bidding period. The guest departure ran cleanly. We still had 6 hours of strike ahead of us. At 1 a.m, I found Adrian alone beneath the half-lowered canopy. He had removed his jacket and rolled his sleeves. A radio hung from his belt. "Simone left," he said. "What did she say?" "That we'd talk." He pulled a mirrored fingerprint from one panel with the edge of his cuff. "You made your point. I kept the room safe. You also handed Arden a front-row seat to every flaw we have. You deactivated my access in front of 12 contractors. I was trying to show them one leader. You showed them one person with authority and another person with liability." He gave a tired laugh. "You really have been saving that sentence." "Since 6:40. He looked up at the divided canopy. "I could have made the full version work. Maybe, with an earlier engineering review, a different layout and time." "That's what makes me crazy. You admit it was possible." "Possible and possible today aren't the same thing." He picked up his jacket. "I don't know how to work with you anymore." "I know." That answer hurt him. I saw it before he turned away. Celeste requested a formal after-action review 3 days later. Mara attended for the Harcourt. Luis, Joe, Micah, Cal, and the display contractor submitted their logs. Tessa sent her 4-hour invoice with a short account of what she had been asked to accept. I brought the safety brief, both versions of the run of show, the elevator roster, Omar's marked rigging plan, and every blue-initialed load card. The review lasted 2 hours. Adrian argued, accurately, that his revised guest flow had protected the program and that the final design had pleased the foundation. I agreed. Then Mara walked through the access revocation, the unreported staff change, the elevator overload, and the unauthorized full trim. The paperwork showed how often Adrian had adapted after a boundary stopped him. Celeste renewed Mercer events for the Foundation's winter reception, but required a named operations lead independent of Adrian's creative authority. Arden went further. Simone's written condition for partnership required Mercer to hire outside operations leadership and prohibit unilateral safety, staffing, and vendor changes by the event director. Adrian would retain creative and client control. He would also have to disclose rush charges caused by unapproved substitutions instead of burying them inside production contingency. The partnership remained possible. It just no longer proved what Adrian wanted it to prove. Mom asked me to meet at the warehouse after the review. Adrian stood beside the inventory racks with his hands in his pockets. Between them, on a folding table, was a revised organization chart. "You'd have equal authority over operations," Mom said, "in writing. Until Arden puts their person above me, we can protect your role." "Like my badge?" She flinched. Adrian looked toward the lighting shelves. "We need you." "I know." He took that as an opening. "Then tell us what fixes this." "I'm resigning." Mom sat down. The warehouse hummed around us, climate control protecting drape, cable, glassware, and 1,000 objects I had labeled and insured. "You can't leave before the Arden decision," she said. "That decision is why I can." "You recommended this warehouse," Adrian said. "You know what happens if the partnership falls apart." "I also signed the equipment guarantee. I'll stay through the current contracts if you release me from it and convert my accrued profit share into equipment instead of cash." "What equipment?" he asked. "Operations inventory, radios, cable ramps, safety barriers, carts, office systems. Nothing booked on an active event." He understood before Mom did. "You've planned a company. I've planned an exit." The negotiation took 6 weeks. It cost me my gala bonus, most of my accrued profit share, and Sunday dinners that became too uncomfortable to schedule. Mom released me from the guarantee. Mercer kept the warehouse and hired an experienced operations director at market rate. Arden signed a limited regional partnership instead of the broader deal Adrian wanted. Luis hired me to build standardized load plans for his rigging company. Joe brought me in for venue coordination on a hotel opening. Micah sent a potted olive tree to my small office with a card that read, "Still judging." The following spring, I returned to the Harcourt as the contracted safety producer for another gala. Rain had polished the service entrance dark. 2 trucks waited at the curb while contractors gathered beneath the loading canopy with coffee and tool belts. I pressed my badge to the reader. It turned green on the first tap. Mara slid the morning safety brief across the desk. I signed it, sharpened my blue china pencil, and drew one firm line beside my name.